keynote speaker, is a leader who envisages visual communication and the arts as an agent of change in community development as well as economic upliftment. He also strives to bring more women into VFX and animation. Presenting to you Biren Ghose, who is the country head of Technicolor India.
Good afternoon, and it's a great pleasure to be at the Kochi Design Week. My first time here. It's absolutely awesome. I just wanted to show you a video, and that's the end of my presentation. So thank you very much for being here. More seriously. Okay, I have a few rows that are empty in the front, so I can't do my entire presentation this way. If there are seats in front, can you move a little bit closer so I can make eye contact and you can make eye contact? How many of you have seen at least one or two scenes from that? Can you put your hands up, please? Okay, 103%. Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. So I wanted to tell you that during the course of this presentation, I will try my best not to use the word design because it is implied in everything that you're going to be seeing in the next half an hour or so. The company Technicolor is 102 years old. It's a little older than me, but it's 175 years younger than the Bolgati Palace. So I thought I should bring you something new into Bolgati, just like the Hyatt Hotel and this particular design island that is going to become a technology hub for the future. And I see a lot of wonderful people that do wonderful things in Kochi. So for Mr. Bose, I want to just tell you that this is my audition for the Biennale. Thank you very much. Okay, here we go. I can't see past this computer, so I'll just be here. Next. I'm going to give you a little, don't start the video yet. I'm going to show you a video that tells you everything that I wanted to say to you. And it comes to you in the words of Jennifer Aniston, M. Night Shyamalan, Reese Witherspoon, Steven Spielberg, J.J. Abrams. It's about 3 minutes long. And it tells you what's written on all those black T-shirts. What's written on those black t-shirts? What are the 3 words there? Shout it out. No one seen the black t-shirt saying, "What's your story?" Oh, this is a really good crowd. Okay, so we made this 3-minute commercial for Apple together, my company, MPC Advertising, which is part of Technicolor. We did this fantastic piece for Apple. It's called Storytellers. It tells you how when we make a collage of different people talking, they're saying the same thing in the way that you craft a story. And then I'm going to show you many examples. So my next half an hour is peppered with lots of video, and I'll try and speak as little as possible because that's what my wife has been telling me to do for 35 years. All right, so can we get Apple? Can we get some of these lights down when the video plays?
Want me to help you find your opening? Well, I would do this. I would start with a black screen, and I would put a little speck of light in the center of the black screen. I would have the light grow in intensity, and then like the Big Bang, it explodes.
Life often makes no sense. There's something about stories that gives a sense of order and purpose to the world and allows us to live other lives than the life we're living.
The best ideas that I've had have come to me when I have least expected them. They're always intruders, but they're welcome intruders.
Once you get an idea in your head, it just keeps nagging at you until you express it.
That's the feeling of the idea, that it just becomes irrational. There's a woman sitting in a car in a field. Now I need to know why she's sitting there.
I begin to believe that there's something of myself that I can share with an audience. If I'm thrilled, that's a good sign. If I'm laughing, that's a good beginning.
It's the spark. It's the living with the thing. It's the outlining of it.
I find writing to be the hardest part.
Writing and rewriting for months or years.
She dies. No, she lives. He dies.
The first draft, the second draft, the third draft, the fourth draft, the fifth draft, the sixth draft, yada, 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 yada.
Then you begin to build the collaboration that will help you go on that voyage.
You've got to find the cast of your dreams.
For every character that I decide to do, I envision memories for them. I create the dimensions of who this woman is.
Imagine if you were this person, and imagine if you lived in that world.
You have to think about the environment that the story exists in. How are you going to create that environment?
What's the look going to be? What's the tone? What's the palette? How's it going to work? The costumes, the props, the set design.
Little by little, and the elements start to come together and build on each other.
It's electric and amazing. The thing is becoming alive.
You walk onto the set and you smell this amazing aroma of sawdust, wood, and plaster.
You just sort of disappear into this fantasy world.
So then you have to think, well, how are you going to shoot this thing? Because you're not going to shoot a movie chronologically, so you're often starting the movie shooting the most dramatic, most painful, most agonizing scene first.
My anxiety often starts at about 3 o'clock in the morning. The wheels have started turning. There is an excitement and a dread.
You definitely go in with a very concrete sense of what you're aiming for. Then you have to be willing to throw it all away.
Nothing I'm doing is good, nothing is working.
The shot goes up and it's not right. And that's torture.
It's not a big deal when it's just you and a pad of paper, but when it's countless numbers of talented people who are all waiting around and the sun is going away.
You're under so much time pressure and you're kind of holding your breath.
Tick, 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 tick.
The pressure is on and it's horrifying.
Fear is good. At least for me, it's good. The fear of failure is a kind of octane that keeps me wanting to stand on the edge of the abyss, but at the same time not plunge to my career death.
It's all falling apart, and a new possibility appears.
There are those moments when the actor is sitting there and she's doing the thing that inspired you months, sometimes years earlier. Everyone is quiet and the crew's just focused and everyone's done their job to get you to this moment. Somehow everything is in sync.
There's truth pumping through your veins and into the story that you're telling.
There is no greater moment than that when you feel that you are really cruising and you're one organism telling one story and you're all telling it with each other's contributions. Nobody's telling it alone.
the sun is in the perfect place, like the birds go right where you could never, like there are moments where you're like, it's impossible. Finally, you wrap the project, and then it goes out into the world, and you hope that all of these decisions that you were part of, that you collaborated on, it will move people and touch people in a way that it seemed like it was inevitable.
Nothing works if the themes don't connect with the audience. They have to.
Sharing stories with one another makes us feel less alone.
Everyone deserves to have their story be told.
That's what makes us special. It's a tapestry of who we are as human beings.
To become involved in someone else's life. That's the idea of what a story should be. A story should make you forget your surroundings, should make you forget your agenda, your day, and hopefully makes you forget yourself.
Okay. So I thought I would give a return present to the government of Kerala. They called me here as one person, but I brought Steven Spielberg, J.J. Abrams, and Reese Witherspoon, and everybody else with me, just to make sure that I could answer the question on everybody's T-shirt, what's your story? And I think really the whole session that I'm going to have with you is to figure out why we do the things that we do. I'm sorry, but this one has to be open even though I'm not using it. So you can just see my cap. It's a Stetson. It's very nice. What drives us to do the things that we do? How has man created design when labs and things weren't invented? You heard in the talk earlier that we have aerodynamic boats here from the ages gone by. It's because all of us, knowingly or unknowingly, have this compelling urge to represent the things that we see in the world and make them part of the stories that we want to tell. And as we look around and go about our daily activities, what we do is to capture things, a look, a movement, a dance, an emotion. And ultimately, we struggle to put this into the context of a story. And very often, when we look at our inner strengths, you'll often hear that people that are painters will actually create characters that are very much like themselves, because all of us are trying to make sure that that story is our voice and has our authenticity. So, in fact, Disney called this the illusion of life. If we look around, we see that design, and I think it was talked about in a way already this morning, is something instinctive, it is accidental, it has a restlessness, it is born very often out of frustration. You saw in the opening shots, the greatest people in the world have their backs to the wall and they're just keeping their fingers crossed. They've crafted everything and they're just hoping that it works in the end. And I have this story from 1948 of a man who went walking his dog in the snowy mountains in Switzerland, I think it was, George Merkel. And he came back and he tried to take the burrs, those little things that stick to you from the woods, onto your coat and onto your dog. And as he was taking that out, he had a moment where he had an insight. And that insight helped him to be the inventor of Velcro that all of us use in the back of our caps and on our clothing. So if you look around, people spend millions of dollars, put themselves into WeWorks and small little labs and try to create things in an environment that is called the startup village. And this is all relevant. But they forget to look around at nature. Because if you look at the last 100 years, most of the great scientific inventions have come from and inspired by the design that nature itself has. And why I feel so intensely proud with the 6,000 people that work with me in our studio in Bangalore and Mumbai is that we now are using all of these tools that were inspired by nature to try and replicate nature again in creatures and animals, and I'm going to show you some fabulous videos around all of that. So the thing about design is that it's going 360, where art influences science, and now science is influencing the new art again. And this is the beautiful circle that creates the new illusions of life, if I may say so. So through these 3.8 billion years that nature has given us as an R&D lab, what we would like to do is to make sure that we use the magic of digital and change what storytelling is doing in the days to come. Steve Jobs of Apple, I'm a big fan of his, I'm sure most of you in the room are, he very famously said that creativity is just connecting things. And that's what we try to do when we craft something, is to make sure that we just connect things and make sure that there are new things that we do. Moving on, what we do in our business as storytellers is that we employ technology, and in our case, technology. How many of you here are able to use a computer with some graphic tool? Can you put your hands up? All right, that's most of you, yeah? Whether it's an app on your phone or a more sophisticated Adobe program or an Autodesk program, what you're doing basically to tell stories, your company's story, your ideas in the new format, is that you're using computing power and artist code applied to translating imaginary ideas into images like you saw in the opening video. That's really what you're doing. You're blending computing power with artist code, right? I think it was referred to as convergence earlier or other things. There are buzzwords for it, but I think that's basically what we do. And the disruptions that are caused in this industry through business model intervention, it's our job to invent the tools and the technologies. I saw some of you taking pictures of this. What you're seeing is glass shattering. But in order for glass to shatter exactly the way glass shatters, although this is not glass shattering, needs to know how things crumble. There's a physics to it. So when we, for example, did all of the water in The Life of Pi or the Pirates of the Caribbean or in the Harry Potters, we actually simulate the way water really works. And there was, for example, in The Life of Pi, a huge tank about as high as this room, and about 30 feet by 30 feet, and we had a boat on top, and then the water was agitated so that waves could be created, and all of those waves were mapped. So that's using basically your artificial intelligence and learnings, and therefore when you saw the two storm sequences and the sinking of the ship, there was no real water in that. It was the simulation that we worked with in order to create and make that happen. And that is the beauty of what we do. Our tool for destruction, right? To design construction, I dare say that you need to know how things will destroy. Because you need to know, that's why you people make buildings that are earthquake-proof, or flood-proof, etc. Because what you need to know is how things react to each other. And we call that tool, because we are quirky, and we actually, I think, got an Oscar award for science and technology for that tool. We call it Kali, like the goddess of destruction. So we do a lot of work that simulates nature in that way as well. If you look at this slide here, it tells you a thing or two about where these stories are used. How many of you have seen the movie on the left? Anyone has seen Saho? Okay, anyone heard of Saho? Yes, a lot of you. So that's one of the most expensive movies made in this country, about 350 crores if I was to believe what I read in the newspapers. And I must tell you an interesting story that I came to this industry in the year 1999-2000. And at that time, the total Indian industry, newspapers, print, media, cinema, blah, 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 all together was $500 million. And $500 million is the budget of 3 Lion King movies today. So this is only 20 years back, right? And if you go today, you will see that the whole industry is about, in India, of all these same things, is $24 billion. So effectively what's happened is that the digital has allowed people to create content. And that content drives devices, platforms, TV channels, and whatever else you see on it. So if you hear that there's a new launch of a Disney Plus or an Apple Plus, what do you think they've been doing for a year or two before that? Is to create a powerhouse of content. And these new tools and technologies help to do that. And I think for local industry, my prediction is you'll see many, many less movies being made instead of the 1,000 that were made for many, many years to come. but the game will go higher because the rest is episodic, it's on TV, it's on streaming platforms. So the tools and technologies that we are talking about in imagery and simulation will become ubiquitous to making the big new things in our country and in all countries in the future. This is a Jaguar. And this Jaguar I'm putting up on the screen to tell you, for those of you who do not work in anything to do with remotely with entertainment, that my talk is ubiquitous. It applies whether you're in the automotive industry, it applies whether you're in the services industry. No matter where you work, the two things that are driving you forward are imagery and simulation, right? And imagery and simulation is what's helping to create animal actors or creatures that no longer should we be able to train dogs or cats or lions to do the things that they did in movies before. And what you're seeing here is not from an Indian jungle, though it might be inspired from one. It's actually something that we created for the the Jaguar Land Rover company. And the Jaguar Land Rover company wanted to create a bunch of new commercials for the Jaguar car because they were coming out with hybrid. And as a result of that, they decided that they wanted to have a Jaguar. So I'm not going to show you those commercials because they're online, they're very short, and they're very easy to see later on. But I'm going to bring the Jaguar from the Jaguar Land Rover commercial that we made in our studios, and I'm going to make that Jaguar do a fashion show. So for the first time in Kerala, never seen before, a Jaguar fashion show, which will show you how Jaguars are made through imagery and simulation. Can we have the video, please? The one thing that I was talking about after the keynote this morning, and I was speaking to the Honorable IT Secretary and saying that we need to create the jobs of the future. And the jobs of the future, no matter if the person's going to do aerospace research or create movies, is to understand that for every single frame of film that we create, there are about 12 to 14 different processes. And those require slightly different skills from a person. So when you first model this Jaguar, it is akin to sculpting. And if you are going to create the textures on it, it's akin to painting. I'm just making this very rough comparisons. And if you saw the breakdown, you saw the anatomy of that, right? You create the rig so that 50 people are using the same model later on. They won't be able to make that Jaguar look different amongst the 50 people. And that's an understanding of math and anatomy. So as you progress down these 14 processes that make each single frame of film, you need to make sure that you create the skill at the scale that you do. So if you took one of those skill sets, let's say models, we have something like 800 people right now just in Bangalore that are outstanding world-class modelers that have worked on all of the stuff that, for example, you'll see later on, we'll show you how Lion King was made. Okay, so this is where we need to understand that each person shouldn't just go as a cookie cutter and say, I'm going to be in visualization or animation, but should be tested for what is their sweet spot on their skill and their ability to work as specialists in visualization going forward, right? So I'm going to take you from here to one particular piece of film that has won more awards than any awards that we've ever won in as short a time as possible. And this is for the Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy brand. They are the #1 luxury brand in the world, and they wanted to do something very different. They wanted to create something for Hennessy Cognac, which is a 17th century product, and the brand itself has been there for 200 years. So what can you do if you want to create a communication for a brand that's iconic? So we went to Sir Ridley Scott, who we made the last 7 movies for entirely, and we worked with him to say, let's do something very cool. And so Hennessy decided that they're going to create a museum in Paris because every frame of Ridley Scott's movies is a piece of art. You can take any single frame and say, wow, that's pixel perfect, it's beautiful, it's crafted, it's curated, and so on. And so we created a project called the 7 Worlds. And the idea is that when these 7 worlds combine, you get those 7 worlds inside every drop of Hennessy Cognac. So I'm showing it to you, look at it at 2 levels. One, that it's supposed to be a promotion for a brand. But on the other hand, it's a piece of art. And this is where, when we talk about design, you can use it to create something that is perpetual, for something old, for something new. I'm not going to say borrowed and blue. Can we have 7 worlds, please? Sweet notes. Rising heat. Spicy edge. Flowing flame. Chocolate lull. Wood crunches. Finally, infinite echo. That's now a communication for a 100-year-old, 200-year-old product, right? So we're going to come knocking on the doors of Titan. Now we can make something like that for you, right? All right, so just moving on to the next part of what I wanted to share with you is to go a little bit behind the scenes and talk about. Anyone seen The Lion King here, the new one? Okay. Anyone seen the old Lion King? So you guys have seen both of them, right? And it tells you one thing that I've said 100 times before. Stories don't change, packaging changes. So what design does is to make people like me that are 100 years old look 21 like this, right? It's kind of the thing to do with CG, we can even do that. But this is Simba, then and now. And I'd just like to tell you, we've had this fantastic journey with Jon Favreau. We won the Jungle Book thanks to his fantastic work. We stay with the previous one. And then his description was this, and I'm quoting from the exact lines that we recorded when we were working with him. How do you update a classic landmark without changing the personality of it? How do you take advantage of all the new technology breakthroughs that we have, but still maintain the soul and the spirit of the original? I thought that this technology would be separate enough from the animated film, but it felt fresh and new, and yet it is completely related to the original. And by the time the Jungle Book was done, we had a lot of facility with the new technology, and we are hitting that part of our stride that said to us, now what can I really do with this? This is what he said when he was starting The Lion King, because he figured out that he is going to do something which we invented together when we were doing the Jungle Book. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about that. So I'm going to show you a breakdown of, in a little while, this is kind of how Simba originated, right? You've seen that earlier on when we talked about the Jaguar. And the thing that we were doing was to create a way, again, using design. How do you see a movie before the movie is made? And this is the virtual production world that all of us are entering. So in The Lion King, we went around and took about 250, 300,000 reference photos, purely for reference, executing a big session across Africa. We produced 66 sets, different environments in which the action will take place, and those sets covered 150 square kilometers. That's an area bigger than South Korea, it's bigger than Bangladesh, it's bigger than Greece. So when people are running across, or you see the bird flying across to find Simba, he's actually covering terrain that is huge, right? And we had to create about 921 different species. We had to look at about 17 main hero characters like this, and so on and so forth. As a trivia, we even had 100 billion blades of grass. So when you saw that movie, nothing in that movie was real. So this all comes from the fact that there is fantastic concept art that is done by the team at Disney and Jon Favreau's team out there. We input a lot into it, but each frame is meant to be photorealistic in the future. I put a post on, I think, LinkedIn yesterday, because there's this fantastic online controversy and chatter. You're not the only one that has online chatter. Huge controversy about the fact that the Golden Globes have nominated The Lion King, along with some fantastic other movies, for the best animated film. And the chatter is about the fact this is not an animated film. So I went to the Golden Globe website, and I found the paragraph that says, what is an animated film? And I'll read the paragraph to you. It says, movement and character performances must be created using frame-by-frame technique. Each animated image must be created or manipulated by an animator through hand drawing, stop motion, pixelation, animation software, or a similar technique. So that was it. Once I saw what it said, I said it doesn't matter whether we put it in for animation or we put it in for visual effects. It fits the description of the award. So we're hoping that we can come back to Kerala and throw a big party if we win the Golden Globe. And it's also one of the 5 shortlisted movies for the Visual Effects Oscar 2020. And all those 5 movies, the 20 shortlisted movies, 5 of which have been done by the wonderful team that makes me look good in Mumbai and Bangalore. So a big tribute to them for this fantastic work, yeah? So just to break a little bit, I'm going to show you some footage which has never been shown on screen before, but we have license to show it now. I'm going to show you a little bit about what went into the making of it. I think there's commentary, so I'll just be quiet and I can talk over it. Okay, let's do it. So you see, this is the environment that we actually started off creating in Jungle Book. These environments are created inside a VR glass. So we wear HTC Vive, and Jon Favreau and his team are there. We get some, this is a template. This is what you see inside that VR, and the cinematographer is using traditional techniques, which he can see in the viewer there, and he's using this template in order to set the shot, to set the lighting, to set the distance, to set everything that they want to set. Cinematographers are used to using those wheels. So even though there's no camera, they still feel comfortable using those wheels, and it's all moving inside the VR set. And 6 or 8 people are watching this. He's standing here as reference, but later in the movie, you'll see that he's replaced by the real character. So this is all the mechanics that are going behind setting up virtual production. We call this Genesis. A lot of companies are doing this. We actually share our technology with a lot of people. Almost every studio we know is now working on a virtual production system of their own. And I think that was the idea that Disney and Favreau and all of us had, that we learned from the great masters who did this in Weta and other places. And you can see how you establish the shot through VR, and then later on it's much easier to have the exact location on branches and so on and so forth. So this is the future. Movies are going to be made inside and behind the camera and not just in front of it. And I think we need to create these technology hubs that make young people and syndicate them. Create a center of excellence, create places where people can come. They are purely going to ideate new games, new technologies, new design, new software, new products, but they don't have to invest in big infrastructure all the time. And they can pay per use, and they can make these projects, which are the projects of the future. So I'll move on in the interest of time. Is the video? All right, let's go for it.
MPC was very innovative in their approach to what we were able to accomplish here. Because we committed to doing all of the work with one vendor, we were able to dedicate resources towards research and development for different simulators, for different fur tools. And so a lot of the things that most audiences might not consciously understand but inform the photorealism of it were innovations that were developed through the research of MPC.
Yeah, well, MPC, they did incredible research and had incredible files of what reality was in Africa. They were able to complete the process, and they would create the characters, and then every week or so there would be reviews, and I would sit in these reviews, and you'd look at Scar or Rafiki or Mufasa, and you look at the characters, and I think Rafiki was one of the first ones that got finished, and you looked at it and you could not believe how realistic it was.
If you look at The Lion King as a technical challenge, really I think the two main things that the audience is aware of is the world and the characters. On the character side, you have, I think, a new level of detail and naturalism in the way the characters look, but also how they animate, how their skin and their fur behaves. And then similarly in the environment creation, we built dozens and dozens of square kilometers of African landscape, both with cameras really close to the ground and cameras super wide, looking all the way to the horizon. And in both cases, the level of detail that's applied and the amount of design and care to really balance, naturalism with design that lets the audience know each of the locations and lets the audience also appreciate the beauty of the place to support the motion of the scenes. That was incredible to see.
To kind of reach the level of realism, we really had to kind of take as much of a scientific approach as possible to understand how to recreate the real world. As the years go on, the software we use becomes more physically grounded. There's a lot more research that gets developed into renderers and realistic lighting and shading. How do we simulate the sun and the strength of the sun and get the right shadow fall off? And so everything about it looks physically plausible. You know, depth of field in a camera is all things that we try to look at real cameras and understand the maths and the science behind how it really happens in the real world and simulate that properly in the CG world.
Like any movie, you want them to be transported, and actually the work that we do, that we strive so hard to get and perfect, needs to become invisible to the viewer. It needs to not pay attention to the fantastic backgrounds and how the hair is rendered and the lighting, where we carefully place the light and the camera, and just get melted away into the movie and suspend disbelief. When you see the first moment, and the first moment of someone talking is so well done that you just say, well, animals talk, I guess.
I hope the audiences who see Lion King just lose themselves in the story and just forget about any of the technical things that go into it that we, struggled over for the last couple of years. That, every couple of years I want to do a film that, when my kids were little, I wanted to do a film for them like The Black Stallion or Fly Away Home, and now I do it for my grandkids. So I'm really excited for, my grandkids to see this movie. And I think that's an important part of our legacy, is to communicate with all different ages. And it's always great to go from a serious adult movie to something that's for kids, because there's nothing more exciting than, to sit in an audience with with young kids and have them experience something for the first time and just get so excited about it. It's the best.
I've been working in this business for almost 30 years now, and there's a few moments along the way where you realize you're working on something quite special. Everybody who was on it was so motivated, and they cared so much to witness the passion of hundreds of people united behind, this dedication to produce something special. I feel privileged to see it. It's always quite a personal thing for me, just to see the teams rise to the occasion like they did.
Just in terms of the scale of the project, I think that was the biggest thing, that when we first took on the show, that was probably the thing that was the most daunting for most people, was, obviously the fact that it's The Lion King, but also just the scale of it, the fact that this is a stereoscopic movie, it's IMAX, the environments were all 3D, big open savannas. So I think just overall, it was just the scale of the project really probably was the biggest thing that we had to overcome.
One of the really great things about this show was that right from the beginning, like the conception, every shot, Rob Legato and the whole team really wanted to use 3D to make this film great, whereas often 3D can kind of be a sort of a last-minute process. So even when we were setting up some of the shots, we were thinking about how these would look in 3D, how the 3D would actually help add to the emotion of the shot. So, whenever you've got Scar on screen being quite scary, we're having him trying to come off screen and be really imposing. All those things, I think, really just add to the emotion of the film and help kind of build up that energy when you're watching it. I had a really good relationship with Rob Legato in that we, from the beginning, we kind of spoke very much about what he wanted for the depth of the show, what kind of his main vision was, and I think very early on we got into a really good rhythm of me kind of understanding what it was he wanted from the shots.
So we did this in native 3D, which quite frankly is and I've done this before, it's the best 3D film I've ever seen or been involved in for one.
We can cut it here, right?
Then we have the IMAX. We decided that we would do the action scenes and the songs and various things in IMAX, but not IMAX as it exists today, as it used to exist, which is...
Yeah, we'll cut it in the interest of time. I have only 5 minutes left, and I thought I should start wrapping up. But I wanted to share this with you because it shows you that at the stage of ideation, at the stage of development, at the stage of production, at the stage of post-production, there is a design, language, and a theme that should start from the beginning and carry through. It's not just about crafting something before. And I think the Indian community is going to see a lot of that happen in content here. So at the end of later in the day today, I just saw a Pete Draper walk in. Pete will used to wake up, stand up and just wave to everybody. Pete's going to show you visual effects done totally in India, 4 Indian movies from script to screen. And yeah, we work together we want the VFX community to kind of build here. This is the very, very top end of the game. Almost all of the assets that you saw, from creatures to environments to all of the stuff there, was done, substantially in India. And I think that's a big, big tribute to the quality of artistry that we've been able to develop and the skills we've been able to hone there. I want to show, in the interest of time, 5 minutes, I'm going to finish off here. Those of you who enjoyed that, can we raise your hands, please? You enjoyed the Lion King making off? Yes. Can you keep your hand up and can you cross your fingers? And you're crossing your fingers that Lion King wins the Oscar, okay, for 2020. And if that happens, I promise to be back at Kochi Design Summit next year and give you a party. All right. So, all right, here we go. I want to show you how artistry is not just about hundreds of millions of dollars, how it's not just about 2.5 years of making everything. The expertise that you create can be deployed in a matter of a few weeks. And in those few weeks, you're supposed to make an ad commercial. So I'm going to, every year, there's this John Lewis commercial that comes out at Christmas time in the UK and wins all the awards. So I'm going to show you how this knowledge of creatures and behavior and anatomy and acting and making it look real can be done in a 1-minute commercial. And this is from last year's John Lewis, or last year before's John Lewis. It's a fantastic piece of work, and it shows you how the actions of these characters speak for themselves. Once again, except for the human characters, everything else is CG, just like in The Lion King. So this is done in a matter of weeks and months and not years, and the budgets are fractional as compared to a big movie. So it's my last video for today. I'm going to show you the John Lewis Christmas commercial from a year or two ago. Lights off. Lights off. Lights off.
Follow the night, can't stand the light. One day I'll fly away, leave all this to yesterday. What more can your love do for me? When will love be through with me? Why live life from dream to dream and dread the day when dreaming?
Don't forget the black t-shirts. All this is being shown to you so that you can figure out what's your story, right? All over the state. So Kochi Design Summit, I'm going to start wrapping up. I had a few more things to say to you that I'll save for next year. I'd like to go straight away to just go forward and forward and forward. That's it. A lot of people are talking about VR and virtual reality and so on, and we've done some amazing projects all over the world. The last goodbye was done for Steven Spielberg. It's a person who survived the Holocaust and the concentration camps in Poland, and he went back for his last ever, and we built the whole VR experience around him so that future generations can do that tour that he can no longer do at 90 years old. And I think it's all about, figuring out how we can use it for virtual production. But my personal belief, and this is a personal statement, is that the world of virtual reality is more likely to arrive in spaces outside of entertainment, okay, in simulation, in aerospace research, and many other stuff there, because we still need a lot more people to have the ability to see VR. But there are a lot of projects that we're doing right now. We're doing a lot of XR projects, a lot of AR projects. So the immersive media is here, but the business model is still on the way to arriving. But I think the tools and technologies, as I've said throughout this talk, that we invent and create, whether it's fur, whether it's anatomy, whether it's all the stuff that we've done for destruction, are actually forebearers of things that happen in all other industries. And I'd just like to end with telling everyone a few things, especially for those who are in the business world today. Number one, forget about best practices. I think the purpose of coming to a design summit like this is to tell you that you're not going to do something because you're following the best practice that was done 5 years back. You need to reinvent some of those things. And I see in the animation world, people just emulate what they've done in previous studios. They hire the same creators, production managers, blah, 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 and then they just try and do that all over again. But what was good yesterday was not true today. Just in the process of making Cats with this phenomenal director, Tom Hooper, which we are delivering at 3 o'clock in the afternoon today, and he was the person who made Les Miserables and King's Speech, we had to create 675 people in Roto Animation, and there weren't 675 people, as Pete and many people will know, in this whole country before. So you need to create that from scratch, and you need to make sure that you throw away everything that you knew and put new knowledge into what you learned to create that. And that can only happen if you have the mindset of an explorer finding new opportunities and methods. So forget about best practices. The second one, be a student. Right? We all need to commit ourselves to continuous learning. I think the reason I come to these kind of venues is that when I hear the other speakers talk about what they're doing, I definitely take away at least 1 or 2 things that I've learned that I didn't know before, and that's the model that we have for all of our team members. Number 3, imitation. People say, oh, this movie was done somewhere else, and so on and so forth. It's absolutely nonsense. I mean, there are fantastic things that come out of imitation, and I'll tell you what that is. There are very few. I started by telling you there are very few original ideas and methods, and you will never be able to find something completely different. But on the way to using these standard methods, you will find how to innovate around them, and that itself is really what I think connects all ideas in new ways that extends imitation into innovation. And finally, don't allow events or situations to control you. I speak on behalf of a number of artists that I interview every day. Just to have the people that we have, the 6,000 people in our studio, my entire team must have met hundreds of thousands of people that have come in, sent their CVs, their show reels, and talked about their journey, especially those who are in the mid and senior level, and they feel very trapped. And I think those that have broken the ceiling and moved up are the ones that have been prepared to look not just getting a better salary for a few years, but have given themselves to projects, to environments, to companies that are going to improve them as creative people. So growth is not what happens to you. It is something that you create for yourself. And it is the way you live, your openness to experience and to events, and to coming to places like this to learn from other industries. I'd like to end with a very, very heartfelt statement of gratitude to the organizers of the Kochi Design Week. Good entry, good timing, and to the government of Kerala, to my fellow participants from industry, to all the young people out there. Challenge me, I'm around. Cheers.